Well, hello, everyone. Great to have you here. How's the day been so far? Yeah, I know. It's kind of that mixed feeling. It's like, oh, it's been good and it's been awful. So we understand. We are a group of parents. And so we've all been in your seats before. And let me just tell you, there is no better place for your kids than right here, right now. We're grateful that you have brought your kids to Cedarville. My name is Jeff Beste, and I am actually on staff here. And in fact, if you have subscribed to the Parent Connect blog, you have already gotten some emails from me. One of my responsibilities is helping to oversee our parent programming. And so we try to get information to you throughout the year that is going to be very valuable for you. Now, let me tell you how this all came about. So my oldest daughter, when she enrolled at Cedarville, I've worked here for years. And so, I thought I knew everything about Cedarville. And she became a student. And shortly after the semester started, I got an email saying that I got a $25 fine because a payment was not made. And so I talked to somebody and said, hey, parents need to get this information. And they said, oh, we give all the information to their kids, and the kids give the parents all the information. Yeah, you all know exactly what that's like. So I talked to my daughter, and she said, oh, yeah, I got that email, and I didn't realize they needed to let you know. So through that, we kind of realized, okay, we need to provide some services for parents that haven't been done already. And so I mentioned it to my boss, and he said, Jeff, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you do it? So over the past several years, our parent programming has grown. And one important thing that has come out of that is we have our Parents Leadership Council. And so I have asked some of our parents to join me this afternoon and talk to you about parenting from a distance. Now, I have to be honest with you, it's not really just about parenting from a distance. I think even local parents, and I live right across the street, but the things that they're going to talk about are just as important for me as for people that live hundreds of miles away. And so I'm going to have our Parents Leadership Council share with you some really important information, and then we'll follow it up with a time for you to ask questions. So we just want you to feel empowered in this new role that many of you have, a role that some of you are familiar with already. But we trust that the information we share with you this afternoon is going to be helpful for you in this journey that you will have over the next 4 years. So thanks for joining us. You can see, there was a picture of me. Is it going to be back up there? Yeah, this is my family. So my oldest two daughters graduated from Cedarville, and our youngest daughter is a current sophomore. And for years, it was just me and the girls, but you can see there's a boy in the picture now. So my oldest got married a little over a year ago, and she also is starting at Cedarville this year as an RD. So if any of you have girls that are living in either Johnson or Wood, my daughter is going to be your RD. So if you have questions about that, feel free and come to talk to me afterwards. And I'll turn it over to the rest of the Parents Council.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, we are incredibly excited that you're here, and we have been through this before, and so we can all sit here and remember what our hearts felt like, and so we have a sense of what your hearts feel like as well. The goal of our time today is really to talk about transitioning. You're here this weekend to transition your student into a new life at Cedarville, and then you'll go home and you'll kind of transition into a new life without that student. And speaking from experience, there were days when I set the table for 6 instead of 5. There were times when I pulled out 6 chicken breasts to grill as opposed to just 5. And that's when the tears came, and that's when that gap was so felt. And we're here to talk a little bit about that, and we have a creative way to do that today. But I want to just start by praying, and then we want to get to ask a couple questions of you real quick too. So let me just pray for our time. God, Thank you so much for your goodness, and most of all, we thank you for your providence and your sovereignty over bringing every single student to Cedarville as a freshman this year that you wanted here. And so I just echo what Jeff said, that this is an unbelievable place for them to be. And we just pray that this would be the beginning of just a wonderful time of their lives. And Lord, we commit this hour to you. We pray that you would touch hearts, that you would help with some practical thoughts as well. And just guide our time, we pray in your precious name. Amen. I want to do a real quick roll call, and if you would, I'm going to ask you to just maybe raise your hand. I have a couple things I wanted to ask. How many, this is your first child going to college? Would you raise your, oh my gosh, that's a lot. All right, so there's some tender hearts. I'm feeling it. How about last child to college? Any of those? Okay, good. Got some of those out there. Alumni parents, so you went to Cedarville, and now your students are coming to Cedarville. Any of those? All right, great. We call this parenting from a distance, so I thought it would be helpful. I mean, I'm sure some of you are from California. We might have Maine. We probably have some Florida, but I just talked to our Vice President of Enrollment Management this morning, and he gave me these stats. The freshman class this year at Cedarville represents 43 states and 33 countries. Isn't that amazing? So when we talk about parenting from a distance, that's a distance. The student body at Cedarville this year represents 50 states and 54 countries. So we've got every single state represented, which is really, really, really great. Jeff mentioned, but you're going to hear from all of us, and we wanted to be able to introduce ourselves to you. And I'm going to start down here with the Linvilles.
Hi there, my name is Randy Linville. I'm married to Holly Linville here. And we aren't that far away. We're not as close as Jeff. We're not across the street. But we are in suburban Dayton in the town of Beaver Creek, Ohio. So if you're not familiar with Beaver Creek, it is the closest mall. So I'm reasonably sure your children will spend time in Beaver Creek between now and when they graduate, because it's a popular destination for students to pile into a car and go have an afternoon or an evening over there. Our kids both went to school here. Our son Grant graduated in 2021. He has a degree in computer science and is a software writer. He loves what he does. Our daughter Paige, who's also pictured, she's a senior this year. She'll graduate next May, and she is planning to teach high school history. Also shown in the photo close up there with Paige is our future son-in-law. They got engaged just last month, and they're going to get married next May after they graduate. So we are adding, yes, thank you. So we are adding one to the family. He's also a student here at Cedarville. So a lot of connections for our family here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Senseman. My wife was not able to be here today, but we live in Indianapolis, Indiana. We, like you, coming to Cedarville, really didn't know what to expect. We dropped our son off here as a freshman in 2018. He graduated in 2022 with a degree in physics. And in that top right picture there, you can see we added a member to our family. So we welcomed Heidi to our family. They got married December 31st of this past year. And in July, we had the privilege of being able to move them to Iowa City, where Blake is going to, he's a PhD physics candidate there. And his wife is pursuing a terminal degree, an MFA in creative writing nonfiction. And then our daughter is the electric guitarist with Heart Song, and she's a senior studying worship, and we're just so excited to be here. This has gone by so fast. And if you are here thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get through tomorrow or the next day or the next month, it goes by fast. And so I would just encourage you, as I begin to share a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, just enjoy every part of the journey, and God will take care of the details. He is faithful, and we can trust him. We all heard that last year loud and clear, and I'm just excited for you all to be here, and so thanks so much for coming.
My name is Courtney Atwell, and Jason is my husband. We have 4 children. Kylie, our oldest, is going to be a junior here at Cedarville this year. And Jason and I also had the privilege of being Cedarville students. We graduated in '98, and we loved it so much that we actually stayed here on staff for another 6 years after that. So we spent 10 years here in Cedarville, and Kylie was actually born while I was the RD of Printy. So Printy was her first home, and then she moved in as a freshman, and that was slightly emotional for me. Full circle story. But she's thriving here, and so far, all of our other children are planning on being Yellow Jackets as well, which we are very excited about. We love this place. Obviously, it's very dear to us. Made a huge impact in our lives and continues to in the life of our family. So we live in Denver, Colorado, so we are a distance. And I will tell you that although that brings challenges, just logistically, we don't regret it at all. It's always worth it. So for those of you who are looking around kind of envying those who are close by, and yes, it might be easier, you still made an excellent decision by coming to Cedarville, and it is worth all the effort and all the logistical challenges that it brings. So just know you're not alone. There's, as Jason said, there's people from all over the world here, and it's definitely worth the effort. So as we talk about parenting from a distance today, we're gonna kind of use this analogy of a football team. And I realize maybe not all of you are football fans, and that's perfectly fine. Our family likes football. Jason and I are Broncos fans, which as of late has been a little disappointing. But we have 2 boys who love football, and our younger son is a hardcore Philadelphia Eagles fan, and our older son is a hardcore Kansas City Chiefs fan. So this last Super Bowl in our house was rather exciting. We were house divided as those 2 teams played each other. We served Kansas City barbecue and Philly cheesesteaks as the food. And we tried to remain neutral and cheer for both teams as we watched that game, and it was a lot of fun. But there's this whole culture around American football, as you all know. The food, the merchandise, the fantasy football leagues, all of that. And as you think about a football team, it takes a lot of roles to make a team function well and be successful. And so we're looking today at parenting from that perspective. So, there's the players, there's the coaches, cheerleaders, fans. And so while we talk about that today, we're gonna kind of figure out what is our role. Our kids are the players. They're at the center of the game. And there are other roles though. We're still on the team, but we have other parts that we play. So we're gonna talk through some of those today to hopefully give you guys some encouragement. And Mark's gonna kick us off by talking about coach.
Yeah, so when we were raising our kids, we homeschooled, and so we were it. We were the coach, I was the water boy, I was the lunch crew, we were the everything. But as we started to look at what was going to be important for them to be successful and for us to be successful, one thing rang loud and clear, that we needed to step back a little bit and change and adjust our role. And we needed to kind of let Blake take the charge a little bit as he was growing and able to do so. And so I want to talk to you about 4 things I think that we have learned as a family that I think might help you in this process. One of the top things that you need to consider is that it's going to be very important for you to be steady and reassuring. My wife talks about when she went to college, as soon as she got her bags packed, her mom started redecorating her room to be the guest room. And that is not a great thing when they come home at fall break or at Thanksgiving to find out that all of the posters, all of the awards, all of the things that they cherished are now gone. And so I would just encourage you as parents, be steady and be reassuring. Now is not the time to make drastic changes because they will want to come home and find things as they were. Now I know life happens. And so there are all things that are out of our control. But as much as we can, I think it's going to be helpful for your student and for the rest of those that they're leaving behind, the other siblings, if that's the case, to be steady and reassuring. The second thing I think it's going to be important is be patient and be flexible. You're going to get phone calls in the middle of the day. And you dads that are at work, you need to plan on those interruptions because you're going to hear about what they just heard in chapel. They're going to hear, and you're going to hear about what they just learned in a classroom, what they're studying together as a D group in their halls. And so I would just encourage you to be patient and be flexible. And There may be some things that are going to happen that are going to be frustrating to you. There's going to be maybe some bumps along the way. But as much as we can, hold all things loosely, and just have that sense that your students are going to need your time. They're going to need your attention. And creating that space, especially for you dads, is going to be really important. And know and you need to let your student know that that's okay. The third thing that I think is really helpful to understand, and this is a biggie, guys, coaches coach and players play. We have to get to the point now where we turn our students over and let them become the adult. They need to feel the weight of what they're going through with their advisors. They need to accept some financial responsibility for how things are going on in their lives. They need to take the lead when it comes to communicating with you. And I think that it's all too easy for us to want to become a player coach and get involved, emailing professors, emailing staff and faculty. That's just a really difficult place to be in. And I would encourage you, go ahead and just make that part of the conversations as you're leaving this weekend. Hey, we've got you to this point. We believe in you. We know you're going to excel. We're here for you. But at the same point in time, they need to assume the responsibility. So just remember, coaches coach and players play. I've never seen a head coach get out on the field and want to take the snap or throw the pass or run the ball. They're there for a different role, and your students now need to accept that. And I think that that's a great way for us to kind of remember that and get off to a really good start. And then the last thing that I want to make sure that you know is be available if a timeout's needed. One of the things that we were able to do is, with both of our kids, is use the fall break and that time between Thanksgiving and Christmas break to evaluate how things are going. Now is not the time to try to schedule a parent-student meeting, in the middle of their week, because they will be doing 1,000 other things. But utilize that time to really check in and see how things are going. With each of our kids, we had them accept some of the financial responsibility for tuition, room, and board. And we used that Christmas break to really set up what's going to happen that next semester. How are we going to navigate these things? But be available for a timeout if that's needed. There will be times where some of your students, if they're close by, they will come home for a weekend and utilize that time. And then one other thing that I would just say, and this might get said, but if there are siblings that are behind, recognize that this is a big transition for them as well. Help them kind of go through that process as well. Let them feel it, that big brother or big sister isn't there anymore. But I would just say, be available. Be steady and reassuring. Be patient and flexible. Keep in mind your students are now in charge. And then the last thing is just be available if a timeout's needed. So I'm going to throw it over to the next person here. We're going to talk about the cheerleader role.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the role of the parent as a cheerleader. And I want to say every time that Holly and I are on this campus for Getting Started Weekend, the energy level here is magnificent. And the students, the faculty here, they're also part of the cheer team. Everybody here wants to see your children do really, really well. So the support network here is fantastic. And in terms of the parents' role, this is a role that all of us have played already, most likely. If your children were involved in fine arts or music or drama or athletics, you were probably with them every step of the way, cheering them on, encouraging them, being there in the stands or in the audience, whatever it might look like. And so as they transition to college, your role as a cheerleader also transitions a little bit, but there are still ways that you can be a cheerleader. So I've got 3 points to make about being a cheerleader. And the first one is, you can continue to keep the crowd informed. You can continue to encourage the crowd. So if you watch a football game, you'll see the cheerleaders doing cheers, getting the crowd involved, getting them involved in the flow of the game. And that's still true of you back at home. Your children have left behind a whole network of people that have known them and cared for them and invested their lives in them throughout the years, whether it be classmates or bandmates or teammates or neighbors or friends, people from your church, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, siblings. Everyone that you know that is invested in your kids would like to know what's up with your kids as well. And so that's something you can do. You can let them know what's happening. You can share any kind of prayer requests that your kids might have with them. And then also, as they're coming home, we're going to keep in line with the football theme, at halftime, Christmas break. You can maybe let their friends know when they're going to be home, or your grandparents or whomever else might be involved, and say, maybe you can reach out and try to schedule some time to get together and meet with them one-on-one and reconnect everybody. So that's the first thing that you can do as a parent. You can try to encourage the crowd and keep them involved. The second thing is you can also think of creative ways to cheer. So way back when I was in high school in the 80s, the cheerleaders in between games would do all sorts of different things to keep the momentum going for the team. They would organize pep rallies, they would decorate the players' lockers, they'd hang posters in the hallways to tell people when the next game was going to be. And there are things you can do right now when you're back home and your kids are here to be creative. There's a lot of different things, but one thing I'm going to point out specifically is you can pick up a piece of paper and a pen and write them a note. Or if you want to score points with their dorm mates, you can send them cookies or candy or gum. If there's some kind of a regional snack that you can't get here in Central Ohio that only is available from where you're from, you can send that in to them. One thing to keep in mind with the mail system here, if you send a package of some kind, your student will be notified, you've got a box, come get it. But if you send something that fits into their mail slot, like a greeting card or a note, there won't be any notification. And we learned that pretty early on. Our son has a September birthday, and my sister sent him a birthday card that he picked up 2 days before Thanksgiving. So if you send a note, maybe send them a text, say, hey, I sent you something in the mail, don't forget to go get it, because otherwise it might sit there for 8 or 10 weeks. If your kids are like my kids are, they don't think about the mail the way that people our age do. So that's the second thing. You can encourage the player in creative ways. And then the last thing is to make sure that you're cheering one-on-one. So Courtney talked about the football lifestyle and the football atmosphere that we have in this country. And so if you've watched a lot of football, you might see, especially in college football on the sidelines, a cheerleader might come right up to a player, right to his face, and do a cheer just for him. I'm kidding, that doesn't actually happen. No cheerleader ever gets right up to a player and does one cheer for him. But my point is simple, and I think it's worth noting here, that if you are not the primary point of contact in your family, it's important for you to still make contact with your kids. So in our family, our kids are more likely to reach out to my wife than they are to reach out to me. So it's really important for me, and it has been important for me as a dad, to send the occasional text, drop the occasional call and say, hey, I love you, I miss you, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you. Whatever that might be, especially if you're not the most primary person that they reach out to, make sure you're still keeping that connection. And sometimes, if your kids haven't reached out for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks maybe, the most important thing you can do is a simple 3-word cheer, and it goes like this: call your mom. So those are my 3. Keep the crowd informed, be creative, and don't forget to cheer one-on-one.
Thanks, Randy. And I want to take it from a slightly different angle of being your student's fan. So what's a fan do? Well, a fan is there to experience the wins and the losses and the highs and the lows. So as your student goes through their 1,000 days here on campus, they're going to have all kinds of emotional responses, both good and bad. And you need to be that listening ear, that soft place to land when they reach out to you to talk. Especially as they're starting out as freshmen, you parents know their personality best, you know their quirks, you know how they respond to stress, and their roommate doesn't yet. Their new best friend they haven't met does not know that yet. So make sure that when they reach out to you, you are a listening ear, but kind of what Mark said, you want to be a steady, reassuring ear. So hear them out, but make sure you're always pointing to the optimistic side of what they're going through so that you don't reinforce any negative emotions. And I remember, for example, when our son, 7 years ago, I guess, when he was a freshman on campus, like Randy said, we didn't have any background with Cedarville yet. And so we came to getting started weekend, what you just did today, and all these kids like swarmed on our car and took all the stuff up to the dorm, and in like 45 minutes he was moved in. And I kind of wanted to say, that was really cool, but also, wait, I wanted more time. Like I expected this to take longer and to have a little more experience with him. And then as the day went on, the electricity on campus just intensified further. And you might experience this later tonight if you stay on campus. There were speakers, there was music going on, kids throwing around the pool noodles, Dr. White's on a roof giving a rally speech. I mean, it was one thing after another. And my husband and I are getting more jazzed by the moment, thinking, we need to go enroll. Like, we'd like to go be students again in college. And we looked over at our son, Grant, who's a little more introverted than he and I are. And he was experiencing this at a completely different emotional level. I mean, he was very cautious, very measured, taking this in. And that's when we realized kind of point number 2 on the fan, which is a fan watches from the stands. So you need to make sure this is not your game. This is your students' game. They're the ones on the field. And as Randy said at the beginning, you know, we're not in Denver, we're not in Hawaii, we are 20 minutes down the road. And so I knew right away that we were gonna have to be very intentional about not stepping on the field. So especially with our firstborn, I've gotten way worse with our secondborn, I'm gonna be honest with you. With our firstborn, we were on campus maybe once or twice a semester, despite the fact that we could do it in a heartbeat if we wanted to. We always asked permission before we came. But the bigger thing really was that this is his game to play. So we never once talked to a professor. We never scheduled a class for him. We didn't help him find that spring break mission trip he wanted to go on. He needs to do all of his research on his own. And I think that was very helpful. And I encourage you to kind of let go, let them adult. That's what they're here to do. And let them launch. And that was, I think, a good move on our part being close. So I say that especially to local and regional parents. I was surprised, though, as much as I think he and I were able to do that, the grieving you feel at home. So I would let my son initiate contact, and unlike most boys, he was actually pretty good at it. So he'd reach out pretty regularly and tell me most things. But we still noticed that extra, place at the table that was empty, or the bedroom that stayed clean because he wasn't there. Our daughter was at home since he was here, and they're about 5 years apart, so she watched him go all through his years at Cedarville. And it was actually Getting Started weekend that she came to one year and watched the electricity on campus. She went out to the lake and took a picture of herself, put it on Instagram or one of the social media sites, and said, "This is where I'm gonna go." So that was a good experience for her. If you want to bring some of your younger students to come visit, your older student, that might sell them on the Cedarville school for them as well. But something else that a fan does is a fan gets to know the team and gets to know the stats. So while it's your student's game, and this is their university, you're a part of the family too. So I would really encourage you to get to know Cedarville if you don't know much about it yet. And one great spot is the website. There's lots of information on the website that your student won't remind you about, but you can find on the website if you learn to navigate. The chapel that they have, which is, again, the heartbeat of the campus, you'll hear that many times. It's held daily right here in this room with 3,000 plus students. That is live streamed. You can watch that at the same time at 10 a.m. every day, or it's archived so you can watch it later and have good conversations with your student about what they're learning. Dr. White's going to be taking them through Romans, and they have a variety of other speakers throughout the year too. The Parent Connect blog that Jeff does is critical. So if you're not on that email chain yet, I don't know how you enroll, but you can let us know at the end of the talk today, and we can make sure that your email is added to that. There's also a parent's Facebook page. So what we're doing today is going to be posted on there. So if you have a friend who missed it, they can find that on the parent Facebook page. But that's another spot where you can go to ask questions, get some answers. But besides knowing about the university, there's so many fun traditions here and lingo that is specific to Cedarville that's really fun to learn with your student. One is their penchant for putting the word Cedarville, or cedar rather, in front of everything. And so like cedar spray is when you go by the fountain here and the wind blows and you get, wet. Cedar shark are the little fish that are, that big going through the pond. Cedar borrow happens when the skateboard that you have is on the other side of campus because your friend took it but forgot to tell you. But it's still there because it doesn't get stolen. Upchucks is their affectionate name for the dining hall upstairs portion because it was run by Chuck McKinney for many, many years. And, what do they call Thanksgiving? Chuck's Giving, I guess, yeah, right before they head out to go get your Thanksgiving meal, which they'll be happy to have too when that time comes. So over the course, whether your child is likely to naturally get involved in things or a little more hesitant too, there are gonna be so many experiences, even this fall, for them to get involved in. So kind of pick up on the website when it's happening, encourage them to get involved. One of my son's favorite things is coming up shortly called Mission Impossible. And it's like this fantastic game of flashlight, ghost in the graveyard combination at night where they're crossing the campus trying not to get caught. So they have fun things like that. They have this campus Christmas where the different dorms will decorate their hall, and then students get to come through and rate who had the best one. And it's a production. I mean, they put on themes that are unbelievable. And then at the end of the year, it's springtime, they do a leave, and that is really Ville for Cedarville, backward, spelled backward, and that is the incredible student talent show. I mean, the talent on this campus blows my mind. And I invite you back at Christmas time, early single digits of December, they will do a Christmas concert here. And the first time we came, it's free to the public, we heard music of such a spectacular level, and I turned to Randy and I said, I didn't know there were that many music majors at Cedarville, because the whole platform was just full of every orchestra and band and singer you can imagine. And other people said, those aren't all music majors. They're physics majors and poli-sci majors and all that other stuff. It's just really fantastic. So get involved as you are able. One of the things I will encourage you to do if you're here this weekend for another day or so, tonight, Dr. White's going to talk in here from 7 to 8 o'clock, and I highly encourage that as he talks to you and gives you additional information that's helpful to know as a parent. And then tomorrow night at 6 o'clock is that jacket jaunt. This is a thing that I said my daughter watched her brother do and said, this is where I'm going to go. And essentially, the jacket jaunt tomorrow night at 6 o'clock is watching the freshmen go over to that really cool patio by the Student Center, get their class picture with Dr. White doing that rally from the roof for them. And after they get their class picture, they walk around the lake to all of us cheering and the upperclassmen cheering on their behalf. And they're essentially inducted into the family, and they come into the for their very first chapel after that. So just remember to be that fan that is is celebrating their highs and lows, being that soft, place to land, that listening ear. But get to know the team, because they're a Cedarville family, but you are the Cedarville family too, and we welcome you and are so glad you've chosen this for your student.
Hopefully that analogy helps as we talk about the football theme. But I think that I saw a lot of heads nodding and resonating with the things that we were saying. But it's only at the bottom of the hour, and we've got plenty of time left, and we would love to hear some questions that you might have for us. It might be a question about anything that you can think of. We've placed a microphone right in the center here. Instead of having somebody run all over the place, we thought it might be a little easier just to come to the center. And I know it might seem a little bit intimidating, but we do want everyone to hear the question. So if you have a question, would you just come and ask the question right here in the microphone, and then one of us will answer. And this is the audience participation part. So if you just all sit there, we won't hear really good questions. So let me just ask you all, who has the first question? I see someone coming down right now. Thank you.
So this is the question. 2 years into your first kid being here, what's the one thing you wish you had asked or known when they first got here as a freshman?
Do you realize how awesome the Career Services Department is at Cedarville? That's what I would ask my student. They came to get spiritual nourishment and enrichment and lifelong friends, but they also came to get a job. And that department does a wonderful job of doing career fairs, having employers on campus, making sure your resume is written well, that you are on LinkedIn appropriately. So make sure, starting from freshman year, that they're participating in those employer opportunities on campus.
That's probably one of the better questions that we've heard in 4 or 5 years. That one has me stumped just a little bit. I would encourage you, if you've got that question and you want to know that also, there are probably a dozen more of us out at the parent table. At the end of this, engage us in a conversation with that. I'm going to think about that a little bit more, but that's probably one of the better questions. I would say that the one thing that I should have said in my talk was, your kids will come home at Thanksgiving, and I'm guessing if your student was like mine, there will be many light bulbs that will go off because of chapel, because of something that they heard, and they will begin to be transformed. This is a transformational place. It's the Cedarville greenhouse. It's not the bubble. But your kids will come home a different individual, and as you see that, encourage them and talk to them and ask them, like, what's going on in your life? Because we see these changes. We see you grabbing hold of your faith. We can do a great job of providing that fertile soil, but when our kids, their faith begins to take root and you begin to see evidence of the ways that they're serving, I think the one question, how I would answer this is, it is very important to get plugged into a local church for them. And I would say that it's great to have an opportunity to kind of see what's out there. Next week, a bunch of churches, a bunch of organizations, they're gonna have a fair day where they're gonna come and your students are gonna be able to get to interact with them. But it will be very important to your students' time here at Cedarville for them to get plugged into a local church. And I would say I would probably have pushed that a little bit earlier and really encourage them maybe a little bit harder to get plugged in someplace. Because that's really where they get an opportunity to be able to put into practice what they're learning. And there's no greater outlet than to serve a local church in this area. Grace Church is where my daughter's a member. It's a fantastic church. A lot of students walk down there together. There are a couple staff faculty here that are elders there and that teach there quite often. And there's a group of students that are journeying together, in that kind of a context. So get plugged into a local church.
That's great. We have another question?
Yeah, so we are coming all the way from Alaska, and so medical-wise, what happens, is there medical here? What happens if something happens? Do you know what I mean? Are there people close enough to help out with that?
If y'all don't mind, for me to take that question again as well, because when our son was a freshman, he didn't know that his roommate would occasionally have seizures. And so it was 2 a.m. and his roommate on the top bunk has a seizure and falls to the floor. And our son says, oh, what do I do? And he calls UMS, which is University Medical Services. They were here in a heartbeat. They were such professionals. And then they know when to triage and escalate it up if a student needs to go to an area hospital or to, a doctor or urgent care. So there are medical services right here on campus, also for less urgent things. You can walk or just make an appointment with UMS also for strep throat or for something minor.
I will tell you, my freshman year, I had a lot of pain in my right foot, and I walked over to the clinic because I felt like I needed to be seen. And the sweet, sweet nurse there said that I had the worst case of athlete's feet she had ever seen, which was so deeply embarrassing to me. So if you haven't brought flip-flops to wear in the shower, maybe that's just something to go to Walmart to buy. But I will say the nursing staff was so helpful for me. And so that was just maybe a smaller example of what they can help with, but for sure. What else? What other questions do you have?
While we're waiting for somebody, for anybody, if you have any questions, I just want to make you aware of Cedarville Classifieds. The students use this a lot, and it was something that I found to be very practical and helpful for our daughter. And so one question we often get from this audience is like, what about airport rides? If your child needs to fly home, and Classifieds, that's a great place to find a ride. You can put out there that you need a ride, or if you have a student who's local and has a car, they can put out there, I will give a ride, and they can even charge a fee for that if they want to. And so that's just one example of how Classifieds can be very helpful. Our daughter came to college this year as a junior with way, way, way more clothes than somehow she knew she had. And so she started listing individual items on Cedarville Classifieds and sold a bunch of her clothes on Cedarville Classifieds. So books, used books, if you want to save some money, that's a great place to do that. So there's just all kinds of great resources on there. So that's something I like to make parents aware of so that you can make sure your kids know about it. It can be very, very handy and helpful to check that as a resource.
I was just going to say one other thing about Cedarville Classifieds is, there we go. Go out again. I'm good now. There's a lot of jobs posted as well. And so if your student wants to get a job, you will find that there are jobs always being posted. It could be Chick-fil-A, it could be the library, it could be, whatever. But that is something that is highly available, and there's constantly opportunities to work on campus as well.
And I was just going to say that as you were driving off of either 70 or coming up from the south, maybe on 75, and you saw all the cornfields when you got here, your students, if they do not have a car, I want you to know that that is okay. There are plenty of people here that would be very happy to give them a ride, whether it's to church. But the thing that I want to let you know is that this university does a fantastic job of bringing in fun by way of what's called an alt night. And you probably won't know what's happening, but your students will. It is one of the best experiences on campus because we realize that this community, there's something special when they develop relationships and they get to know one another by having fun. And so Monday through Friday, education, chapel, discipleship, but on the weekends, there's a very continual pattern of where they will bring in events and things that can be done here. There's concerts that happen on campus throughout the year. There's other ways that your students can experience the university culture, get to know other students, and do so in a way that is really relational and really fun. And it starts this weekend. And so your students will be involved in a number of activities in the evening time as they're in their STING groups. I would really, if they're like, I don't know if I want to go to that, it's the best way to start developing that nucleus of friends that then you learn who those friends are and it begins to develop this community, but those alt nights are really important. And so my son was like, I'm just gonna hang out in the dorm with my friends. He had a missed opportunity to be able to participate and get to know some other people. So I'd encourage you, take advantage of those things. Brian Burns and the campus experience, they do a fantastic job of bringing some just phenomenal opportunities to your students, to our students here on the weekends, to be able to kind of let their hair down and be able to enjoy one another as friends.
What other questions? Don't be shy, come on up.
I'll throw this out there while you guys are thinking of your next question. We talk a lot about the excitement and that you're gonna thrive and you're gonna excel and those things are going to happen, but also there are gonna be lows in addition to the highs. And sometimes that comes in the form of some failures here and there. We've chatted with some other parents, and including our own daughter as well, whose students struggled first semester just to find the balance of college life and classes. I mean, you are here to take classes, and there's a lot of fun going on. And so I just want to encourage you that if you're starting to feel a little bit of like a hyperventilating as your student might not be doing so great in a certain area, maybe it's grades or relationships, those things tend to work themselves out, especially in this role that we've been discussing up here as they're the player and you're kind of on the sideline in different roles. Encourage them to pursue what they need to work that out. If their grades are dipping, you don't make that phone call. They do. They schedule a time with their professor, or they go to the Cove, which is academic support that we offer right here on campus. It's a great resource that they can use. So don't let that cause any kind of sense of a panic. It's manageable, but I also just want you to know that can happen and that can be normal. We tried to prepare our daughter for that a lot because we had spent so many years at Cedarville. You know, we talk it up a lot, and we do think it's just about as close to perfection as you can get on this side of heaven. But there's a lot of people here, and people mean flaws, and sometimes there's going to be some rub as well. So I just don't want you to be shocked by that. I think Cedarville is the best place to be, but there's going to be challenges, and that's okay. I would not want anybody to feel discouraged. Know that you're not alone. Know that your student is not alone. And as they work through those things, they grow into adulthood. And it's actually a great opportunity for them to kind of start self-advocating if they're not in that habit already. But that could happen, and especially first semester, you'll see them go through some highs and lows. And so just hang in there and know that it's part of the process and it's all gonna be okay.
I don't see any more people coming down, but let me just say this. We're gonna be up here for a while if you wanna come up and just ask us questions. And then there is a parent table right behind this chapel that you can stop by as well. But panel, anything else that you would wanna share that was kind of burning a hole in your heart to share with our parents today that you wanna close with before we end?
I just wanted to reiterate again how wonderful of an experience Holly and I have had with our kids here. We've talked about a lot of different things, and Holly mentioned our first Getting Started weekend. We so badly wanted to come back to college and be students again. And I remember that first time, and this speaks broadly to the university's role and what they do this weekend. The first time we showed up on campus to move our son in, I brought a change of clothes, figuring I would flop sweat and just be a sweaty mess. But like Holly said, they descended like ants to unload our car. And that's really how the university is. I mean, Courtney referenced the Cove. There is a huge level of people wanting to help your students, whether it be staff members here or the people that live in their dorms. I mean, our son is one of those kids who understands calculus. And so he was able to help some of his classmates understand calculus, just one-on-one and that kind of a thing. So there's a huge number of people that want to see your students do well. So just embrace that.
I want to just talk to all the tender hearts that are out there right now. I don't know if any of you out there are feeling like I did when we dropped off our firstborn. I was pretty emotional, and there's a grief that happens when you let a child move into this season of life. And so for anybody out there, I want to say moms, but I don't know, my husband's been known to shed a tear or two. So for anybody out there who might be feeling emotional, I just want to encourage you. One thing I learned from this is a real opportunity for you to press in to your walk with the Lord as you let your child go a little bit. Feelings of sadness, the beauty in that is it makes us so much more aware of our need for the Lord. And so it's really an amazing opportunity, if you can look at it that way, to just grow deeper in your walk with Christ. As you pray for your student, miss your student, cry. My daughter had all these surgeries in high school, and one day, I don't know, a week or two after she was gone, I opened a closet and saw her crutches, just burst into tears. And you'll have these little moments, that just trigger your emotions. And so that sadness is, it's not a pleasant feeling necessarily, but if it drives you into deeper dependence in Christ, then that's the beauty of suffering of any kind, And then the other word of encouragement I would give you along that same lines is you get to watch your student do the same thing. Their walk with the Lord will deepen as they become more aware of their dependence on Him and learn to rely on Him every day, being on their own for the first time. So it's truly bittersweet, that mixture of emotions. But I just wanted to connect with all the grieving hearts out there and let you know you're not alone in that either. We understand, and we are specifically praying for that for you as you transition into this new season of life. And just know that the more time that goes by, you're just gonna love what you're watching happen with your student. And then you get all this joy of just observing that. And that's fun, and that makes it so worth it. So we're excited for all of you. And it looks like we might have another question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, our son is an introvert, and he says, I'm not a people person. And could you talk a little bit about, because our heart's desire is to see him have great godly relationships and grow, especially spiritually and emotionally, as far as relationships. Can you talk a little bit about, the discipleship and mentoring that we can expect happening here at Cedarville for our son?
I know all these guys, and I think I might be the only introvert on the panel. Is that right? What about you, Mark? Are you an introvert?
I'm probably more introverted a little bit, but I would say our son is definitely an introvert, and he doesn't need a lot of people, but he needs a few really good close friends to have deep conversations with. And so the quality, while maybe the quantity is not there, I feel like the quality of interactions and the depth of conversations that happens here at Cedarville will scratch that itch and will let him maybe develop that core group. Not everybody needs to be the campus director and head of SGA. We realize that there's people that are like that, but there's others like your son. It sounds like, man, I just need a couple really, and I would say that probably your roommate, his roommate, and that hall that he's on. Just start with that. Don't feel like you have to meet everybody, but over the course of the next few days, that's the group that really sticks together. Jeff, I'd like for you to talk about some of the other organizations that's here, particularly the one that you have kind of been the champion and the co-sponsor for, and just some of the other opportunities that you're aware of.
Sure, there are a number of men's organizations that students can get involved in. In fact, here in the first probably 3 weeks, there is such a big focus on ways that students can get involved in building relationships. And it's always really amazing to see on the Parent Connect Facebook page, people will say, our kids just not meeting people. We wish the university would do more to help people build relationships. And the reality is, boy, the university bends over backwards in providing opportunities for that. Your students just have to take advantage of some of those, but there are really so many. In fact, in probably 2 weeks, there will be tables set up in the lower level of the student center talking about getting involved in discipleship groups. I would really encourage your son to consider being a part of those discipleship groups. They're small groups. They meet weekly. You don't have to be outgoing to be a part of those. In fact, I know people that go and they just sit and listen. You don't have to talk necessarily, but it gives you an opportunity to build relationships. But there are really a lot of different opportunities like that on campus.
And I'd also say part of Getting Started Weekend, there are STING groups. And so everyone is assigned a different STING group, and that's a way to get connections made really, really early on. I mean, literally tonight, I think, right? They're going to be meeting their STING groups for the first time. So that's a way to get to know people in a smaller setting. And as Jeff said, I think the university does a really nice job. I mean, force isn't the right word, but almost forcing students to have the opportunities to meet people. So like you said, it's just a matter of getting them to take advantage of it. But there's certainly the STING groups during Getting Started Week, and then the discipleship groups. The other thing too, I think Jason mentioned it, there are jobs on campus. So if they don't necessarily want to be super duper social, there's a way to get involved with a really small group of people working in some department, in IT or as a paper grader for a professor. There are ways to do things to make smaller, more intimate connections with people rather than in a bigger, broader group too.
Do the RAs play a role too in regards to kind of encouraging them spiritually as well?
Yes, RAs are hopefully of a discipleship mentality. And so I confessed to being an introvert a moment ago. I was that student who was clinging to my parents when it was time for them to leave, and then I stood on the sidewalk in tears and watched them drive away. And so it was a real stretch for me to be left here as a quiet, shy, introverted type. And I was just going to share, dorm life is ideal for that personality. And to your point, the RAs, they can really help just ease students in. Who are a little bit more on the uncomfortable side, with just all these people and it's all new. And so the relationships, I think, that most naturally happen are those in the dorms. And RAs are trained, before the whole student comes to be thinking about, or the whole student body comes, to be thinking about those types of things as well as activities that they plan. And it kind of, for those of us who are a little bit more shy, it gives us a place to be and to belong. And so that definitely is a big part of it. But I also just want to encourage you, it's a great growth opportunity. And so from the time of being a freshman until graduating, I became a little less introverted and started to come out of my shell. And I think that happens for a lot of students that come here. And then it's just the relationships that happen between all the different personality types are just so enriching for everybody. And it's a great place to be no matter what your personality is.
I think you want to keep in mind too, RAs are students. And so they have the same kind of pressures in their lives that your students have. So you won't always have the RAs going around checking up on everyone, although all the RAs that I know really do like to know their students well. But there might be times when you need to encourage your son or daughter, hey, why don't you go talk to your RA about this? If they feel like they don't have any friends, go talk to your RAs. And I know that the RAs are more than happy to sit down and talk with them. But sometimes they're not the ones that are actually out pursuing your son or daughter.
Well, as we close, let me just, I want to show you a slide here of a couple email addresses. You are more than welcome to reach out to one of these ladies, and if you have more questions that you want to email or as they come up during this first semester here. But we're so excited that you're part of the Cedarville family. We love the fact that your kids are here, and as an alumni, I will tell you, best 4 years of my life. Just such an amazing opportunity, and we pray and hope that that will be the same for your students as well. So as we close, we just want to pray over you, and Mark's going to close us out, but thank you for being here today. It's been our joy to host you.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this group of families that are represented, and I just pray for these parents over the course of the next couple hours and days and their students. Father, I pray that this would be a place where their students would grow, would find a deeper relationship with the Lord and a community with one another here. So thank you so much for their interest and for their hearts, for wanting to really figure out and navigate this new season of life. And so as we close today, I just want to give you thanks and for just the ways in which you're working and moving. Pray that you would meet the needs that are here, that are represented by these moms and dads and families, and just encourage them, strengthen them through your Holy Spirit, and help them to just have a sense of trusting in you, because we know that you are faithful, you're a good God, you want the very best for us, and that we just love you. Thank you again for this day and this opportunity and for these new beginnings. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
You're dismissed. Thank you.